So this is his latest video, One Human Being in the World. Here we go.
I'm just one man walking alone through the wilderness of wind and cold, through the landscapes of hungry wolves kicking rocks and rolling stones. I'm just one human being in the world. I'm just one human being in the world, where the oceans and rivers collide with a living go to die forsaken, run and hide. The first time a baby cries, I'm just one human being in the world. I'm just one human being in the world. I don't want to burn it down. I just want to laugh out loud. I've had enough of plastic town, so I'm living on the outward bound in the mountains of broken glass with the spirits. The ilk roam past, the future becomes the past, and the sun just wants to make it last, and the moon stares down at us all with a longing of snowfall by the teardrops of waterfalls, by the train tracks of destiny's call. We are all for one and one for all. We are one human being in the world. We are one human being in the world. In the world. In the world. In the world. In the world.
I couldn't resist smiling and cutting off the little outtake here. All right, everyone, let's bring on Bryan McPherson. What's happening, man? How are you doing?
Hey, buddy. I'm doing good, man. How are you?
Doing all right. Just, you know, doing the whole YouTube thing and working away at a job that I'm, you know, you just got to have a job, apparently, you know, so.
Apparently you have to make money in this world.
Ah, it's terrible. Why does it cost money to live? Why? Well, thank you so much for joining us here, Bryan. Guys in the chat, you know, Bryan and I did a whole long form interview where, you know, we showcased little bits of every single song from his new record, Immigrant and the Winter of Death. And we just kind of chat about a little bit of everything. So, you know, at the end of this little segment here, if you're like, I need more Bryan, check out that interview. And of course, check out his website in the link in the description below, where you can find tour dates, buy the album, all that great stuff. Welcome, Bryan. How was your workout, man?
It was pretty good. I didn't go too crazy. So I had to tire myself out a little bit, you know. Otherwise, I have a hard time sleeping at night. So
yeah, I was gonna ask. So is that one of those things that you just find that you get better rest when you're staying active like that?
100%, yeah. And I always like to hit the sauna too, you know, kind of cleanse
drain
out
you a bit. Yeah, nice.
Hydrate, dehydrate, rehydrate, burn calories, consume calories, do the things, you know.
Yeah, we're just meat machines, right?
Apparently.
So
thanks for having me on, man.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a pleasure. And you're just about to hit the road here. Does it begin in July?
Yes, I'm heading out in July, and I will be touring across the United States from Montana to Boston with a bunch of shows in between there. And so starting, I'm working on something now in Salt Lake City, but we got Oklahoma City,
Nice.
yeah, Wichita, St. Louis, Chicago, Peoria, Illinois, Salina, Ohio, Asbury Park, New Jersey, New Hampshire, Boston, Maine. Um, and then I have to put some more work on to book the return route. So we got a bunch of
Yeah.
stuff up in the air right now for that. Um, so yeah, it'll be the first time I've done some tours in the last couple of years around the West, but I haven't done like a west to east stretch for like a month or two and since 2019. So I used to do that all the time until 2020. So that'll be
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, we should talk about that a little bit. I know we really got into it when we did our long form interview, but the pandemic just sort of I think it flipped a bunch of people's lives upside down. Certainly yourself being, an independent musician and somebody who, plays music for a living, it had a huge impact. You just want to talk a little bit about that for the folks here in the chat, just to kind of give them an idea of, of how that all went for you. And then I know that, now that the record's been out for a while, I think that it's been received pretty darn well. Of course, there are people out there that are probably never going to get it, but I think there are a lot of us that were ready for a record like this that spoke some hard truths. So yeah, just fill us in a little bit about that whole journey for you, and now turning a page over to something really hopeful and awesome with being able to head back to Boston on tour.
Yeah. Well, 20, where do I begin here? It's been a long, interesting couple of years. I have a very different life right now. But to kind of summarize, I was pretty much a full-time musician, singer-songwriter, traveling all around doing the thing. And when 2020 happened, that all stopped. I started doing like a lot of live streams and stuff like that, keep my head above water. Anyways, I was back in Los Angeles, and to be quite frank, the mandates of medical treatments that were being implemented drove me out of
Mhm.
California, out of Boston, out of anywhere where I was going to be forced to do something that I did not think was good for my health. So
Mhm.
I kind of vote with my feet and my actions, and so I took off to Montana. I packed up all my stuff. Um, it was not a happy, joyous time. It was a very 2021, the fall of 2021 was a pretty frightening, alarming time. If you were on my side of the fence and didn't agree with what was happening, you were ostracized, demonized,
Mhm.
everythingized, disenfranchised, kicked out, called a human rat, grandma killer, et cetera, et cetera. So I was like, society's just really, I'm not vibing with you guys right now.
Oh,
I'm going to go
yeah.
somewhere where there is legislation that I won't be fired from a job if I get a job. So I went somewhere where there was legal protection against that sort of thing. And over the last couple of years, obviously, I'm still alive. So I feel like I made a good decision there. And
Yeah.
not to beat a dead horse, because I, like everyone else, I'm trying to move on with my life. But I did write a bunch of songs in the turmoil of that winter, which I is called the winter of death, because that's what the president kept telling me it was if I didn't comply. So
Mhm.
it very much was the winter of death. I packed up all my stuff into my Prius and I drove to Montana with no real place to live. And I wound up in Paradise Valley in basically a like summer rental that they rent out in the winter for pretty cheap. And I just moved into this town of like 80 people and stayed at this house. And, you know, the heartbreak that I endured in my relationships and the personal friendships dissolving and everything that just kind of just tore me apart, just all kind of, I just coughed it all up in these songs when I got to Montana. And then over the course of the next year or so, I went, you know, I ended up moving out of there to a different part of Montana. I went back to the same house and I recorded all these songs and produced them and, you know, gave them my own, you know, kind of production flair to it and whatnot. And was able to finally, you know, produce this record and put it out a few months ago. So yeah, it came out in pieces in over the winter, and then the vinyl started shipping in January. So this will be
I
the
got
first.
mine
Nice.
right,
All
right
right.
there. I got mine framed. It hangs up on the wall right now, but I took it down so we could show it off. And Brian signed my copy. You guys,
Awesome.
you could still get the vinyl if you go to bryanmcpherson.com. It's the best way to hear music, and especially to hear something like really personal and intimate, like the way that Brian recorded this record. It sounds amazing on wax. So please go check that out. Yeah,
Thank you.
it is really odd. Like, you know, I think we touched on this, you know, in our interview earlier. You know, just I never thought that I always thought the people in the musical world or in the artistic world would be like, they just seem so accepting of most things. And then when everything went down with the pandemic, it just seemed like, well, here's the one thing we're not going to bend on at all. And we're going to totally side with the establishment. And it was like, what the hell just happened? Like, not I'm the only one, or you know, not I'm the only one that's skeptical, but it feels that way, like,
Yeah, it
because
was very
everyone was
isolated.
just so on board, you know.
Yeah, it was a pretty. I mean, I wanted to move initially to Texas because it was closer to Mexico. Because I was like, what if I have to leave the country? You know, I'm not going to Canada because
Yeah,
it's crazier up there than down here. So I was like, oh,
yeah,
I'll go to
jeez.
Mexico. Man, so yeah, it was you know, people get hysterical. You know, people were whipped up into
Mhm.
a frenzy by the media and the government with an agenda. And, you know, that's how a lot of horrible things happen. And a lot of people were hurt. You
Yeah.
know, for me personally, I was like, I remember saying like on the internet, like to like my social media people, I'm like, I support your right to do whatever you want. And they'd be like, how could you? Ah, you're a and I'm like, I just said, like, you can make your own decision, but we know that you mean you want to. And I'm just, you know, I'm like, you know what? There's
Yeah.
no talking to anybody right now. I have a heart condition, and you know, I have like multiple friends have like heart issues after getting injected, and I'm like, you know,
Yeah. Well, and
myocarditis
now
and on and on and on. I'm like, I'm not doing it. I'll take my fucking chances, bro. You know?
yeah. Well, and in the last couple weeks, you know, they've gotten a lot more candid about, you know, what they were really finding versus what they
Yeah.
were saying. There's been it doesn't seem like anyone's going to ever be held responsible,
No, of course
unfortunately,
not.
for you know, blowing that horn, you know, basically yelling fire in a crowded theater and just watching people trample one another. It's pretty wild. I think sometimes people forget that it's like, people usually like to think, well, only like this one side of the government is going to ever weaponize like their beliefs. And it's like, nah, I think they're all capable. Like,
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
all capable. And we always have to keep our eyes open, because even if somebody is like in a party that you like, or whatever, it doesn't mean that they're infallible. I think it's, you know, just like everyone else, like we all make mistakes. And yeah, people, gosh, going back to Romero, which I know you and I are both big Romero
Oh yeah.
fans, something like The Crazies, that, you know, like you watch a movie like that and you see it's literally about an airborne virus that makes people go crazy. And it's the paranoia of like, who can you trust? And like, how do we
Right.
find a cure, and how do we find the truth? And then boom, like I feel like the pandemic is something that George must be looking down from heaven being like, I told you know,
Yeah.
smoking a cigarette and drinking 2 cups of coffee at once.
Yeah, I
uh,
mean, like, you know, Dawn of the Dead is one of my favorite movies and was as a child, and it's always, you
mhm.
know, to look at it psychologically, you kind of look at the layers of the masses kind of attacking the individual and being on the run from, you know, large groups of
Mhm.
people who are all kind of in a daze and trying to
Yeah.
eat you alive, you know, and you're kind of like, oh, what do I do? And you try to find like, you know, some people who are somewhat like-minded, I guess, to but, you know, I've always been fascinated by that. And you know, it was kind of one of those experiences where, you know, growing up as a child, it was hard to understand the atrocities of history because I
Hmm.
didn't really have anything, you know, in the 80s and 90s, like, you know, it wasn't very hysterical or authoritarian necessarily here in the
Hmm.
States. And over the last 10 years or so, things have gotten to a point where I'm like, oh yeah, like I can see how all of a sudden they just want to put everyone into a camp and kill them. You know, I'm like, I can really see
Yeah.
how those things start. And
Hmm.
just kind of the hatred and the, you know, like scapegoating and just vitriol that I witnessed just by be saying like I believe in your right to make your own decision about your own body, you know, and then, you know,
Yeah.
uh so I mean I'm kind of a principled person. Like I believe in your freedom to make your decisions, not just when it's like convenient to like what I
Hmm.
think necessarily. I mean, um, I just kind of use logic and uh, anyways, I
Yeah, I was just gonna say they're really sneaky about how they do it, right? So it always seems like it's coming from a good place at first, and then before you know it, if you use, these sorts of words, people are just gonna automatically assume you mean this one thing, or they're just gonna make up words like misinformation for
yeah,
something that if they don't agree with it, they just call it misinformation, and then
yeah.
everyone gets like very quickly sort of brainwashed into
Uh,
thinking, oh yeah, that's misinformation, and
that's
it's like, well,
information.
just
That's
because
information.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
like
They just like
just
hear the
because you
word
don't
and they just
agree.
yeah.
It's
Someone
like,
just starts
um,
parroting these catchphrases, and you're just kind of like,
oh yeah.
you're a punk rocker? What? What? I don't get it,
Yeah, yeah,
man.
exactly. Well, and now, in the spirit of kind of like, turning that page and going into this new chapter, it's got to be awesome seeing, the support that you have gotten for the record and for your songs that you've been putting out. And now, hitting the road again, it seems like stuff is kind of, getting back to a little bit more of a normal for you. So, how pumped are you to hit the road here?
I am, you know, I'm kind of pumped. I don't know, you know, it's a big change. I used to do it all the time, but you know, you get a lot riding on it, you know, a lot of like things can go wrong. So I'm still trying to book it. You know, I'm excited to get back out there. Like, you know, I really like to explore the United States, and I've been able to do that for extended periods of time, and I've learned a lot about different people and cultures here in this country. And you
Mhm.
know, everyone's in their little bubbles, you know, like I remember I grew up in Boston and they're like, you know, everyone down south is an idiot. And you're like, what? What are you talking about? You know, like it's just like everyone's like at these camps, you know, and
Mhm.
half the time they haven't even been anywhere, you know, and then I'm like, you know,
Sure.
maybe you should go down south before you just judge, you know, millions of people who live there, you know, you're just
Yeah.
like, and I even like in my travel back in the day, the first time I was in Phoenix, and they're like, "Oh, Tucson sucks," and then I go to Tucson, they're like, "Oh, Phoenix sucks," and I'm like, "You guys are neighbors, like you're all
Yeah.
Arizona to the rest of the country." It's like funny, man, people. But
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to getting back out there and you know, hopefully playing some shows and people come out and hear some songs and it goes well. So um, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think as you experience like the different cultures and subcultures within the country, it's like you realize, that we have so much more in common most of the time.
Yeah.
It's one of those things like we're told that we don't really, wouldn't get along with our neighbor, but most of the time, like you really would. So it's like you're saying, once you actually go out there and experience it, you're like, oh yeah, there's plenty of good to take from here, and every place has its good and its bad, right? It's
Yeah.
like, I love going to Tucson. Like I would live there if it worked out. Like it would be a fun place to live because it's vibrant, a young group of people out there with the school being so massive. And then there's certain stuff about Phoenix that I really like. It's a convenient place to live if you want to go to a bunch of shows, and there are conveniences of living in a big city, even though it's not maybe ideal. But yeah, it's like one of those things where, again, it's about finding more of that common ground, and you know, and really the only way to do that is to have that conversation, you know, be more open with people. And I feel like we're kind of finally at that point where everyone's ready to just sort of, you know, push away the last 5 years or so, last 4 years, and just kind
Yeah.
of get on with
Yeah,
it.
seriously. That's why for the latest video I did that song because it's a little more it's a more positive song when the other songs on the record are kind of like just not they're very like tortured artisty type songs. And that song, you know, it on the surface, like you can listen to that song or watch the video and like, okay, well, there's one guy walking around. Oh, but it's like a lot of a thought kind of went into the video. And you know, the song starts out, it's like I'm just one man walking alone through the wilderness of wind and cold, and there's like that isolated. And I was in Yellowstone and shot the bison there with the footage, and like the
Yeah.
bison is me like alone, and like and then as the video like progresses, you kind of go back into society, and like you know, it turned up the saturation on the video, more brighter
Hmm.
colors, and then kind of ends with like we are one, you know, we're all like one human being in the world, you know. And
Yeah.
has more of like a positive message, and kind of like wanting to like kind of reconnect, because you know, a lot of people who had the opposing viewpoint as me, they didn't they don't even know like what people who didn't comply went through. Like we went through hell. We lost jobs, families, friends.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people, we all moved to like we
Yeah.
fled, you know, and like we had
Yeah.
to like rebuild our lives. And if you didn't have to do that, it was you kind of like in the backdrop, like, who are these people? Why don't they just do it? You know, like what's their
Yeah.
problem? You know, like we're real people. Like we really had our fucking lives like ripped apart, you know? And it's
Yeah.
maybe like maybe be like, "Hey, sorry about that," at some point, but you know, we're not holding our breath. But you know, it was a time, and it took a lot for me to even make this record and put it out. Like I wasn't even gonna put it out. I'm like, this is just a therapy record, you know. I'm just make this record, and that'll be that. I'll move on with my life. But you know, I really came down to like, what the hell do I write songs for in the first place if I'm gonna make a friggin' record and not put it
Yeah.
out, like because I'm
Yeah.
afraid? Sorry, you
Yeah.
know, like, so I just had to put it out. And you know, here I am with, you know, kind of seeing how people will be out there in the world when I go out there and you know, leave Montana for a while and sing some songs in some strange places. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. I think I don't know why. I just have a feeling, just based on, you know, the way I've seen people react to it, especially I feel like people you know, a pretty good reception, and definitely like people, of course there are the detractors in a couple comments here or there, but more people like going to bat for you,
Yeah.
you know, and sharing everything. And I think like, you know, it's one of those things, guys, for everyone in the chat, you know, Bryan has always spoken his mind in his songs. He's never shied away from anything. So, you know, for me, it was just, oh, this is just Bryan, you know, singing about another part of his life. Whereas, you know, you'll sing about uncomfortable things in your previous songs. You know, you sing about injustices that have happened to people, and, you know, like real shit. So, to me, I wasn't very shocked, I guess. I was like, well, this makes total sense,
Yeah,
you know?
I
So I
was at
think
the
that,
forefront of, like, a lot of these left-wing causes that I was singing
yeah.
about 10 years ago, you know, before it was fucking popular. You know, I got a lot of shit for it too. And then these same people flip on me, you know, and it's
Mm,
like, "I'm just singing about freedom, motherfucker. Freedom. Freedom.
yeah.
Yours and
Yeah. Like,
mine. Not just, like,
yeah.
yours and what you think I should do." No, man.
Sure.
It goes both ways, you know?
Yeah, and
So
it's like more or less you've sort of stayed, you know, centered, and it's like stuff is, you know, changed around you as far as all that goes, you know. So so yeah, it is awesome to see that support out there. I do see there's a question here from Raymond Malaber. He asks, is there someone you would like to work with someday? I would guess either a producer or maybe even another musician if you wanted to team up on something.
Jeez, I didn't even, I don't know. Probably, I would imagine. Yeah, like, Bob Dylan maybe. Who would I like to work with? Like, I've always loved, the Rick Rubin's records that he makes, the producer. I
Yeah.
got to make a record before this. I got to make a record with Ted Hutt, who's produced a lot of really awesome records. He's won like Grammys and shit, and that was kind of like, someone I really wanted to work with, and that came true. But yeah, probably like Rick Rubin as far as like a producer. I mean, I really love those Johnny Cash records that he made
Mhm.
later in his career. And that's kind of, I took inspiration from that with Immigrant, which is like, I'm not going to a studio. I'm bringing a microphone to the me, and the
Mhm.
mountain on the cover of the record is the mountain I looked at every day. It was like right out the window. So that's like why, and that's called Emigrant Peak in this town called Immigrant. So yeah, like Rick Rubin, if you why might as well shoot for the stars, right? So
Rick, if you're listening, if you're in the chat, let us know.
yeah, hit
Yeah,
me up,
Rick
Rick.
he's really interesting because he really does become another member of the band or just another part of the artistry because I feel like, I mean, gosh, like we're all the Def Jam stuff he did, going to, Tom Petty, Dixie Chicks, Red Hot Chili
Oh yeah.
Peppers, Johnny Cash, and like so much more that I'm missing out on because he can just seamlessly go from artist to artist. And to me, I think like the records that he does with these artists end up being standout albums in giant catalogs. It's almost like you can tell when Rick Rubin worked with them because there really
Yeah.
is something special about what he brings. I mean, even I'm not the hugest like Red Hot Chili Peppers guy. Like my wife absolutely loves them. But man, when I listen to the records that he did, like when you listen to Blood Sugar Sex Magic, like it blows your friggin' ears off. It sounds
Yeah.
amazing.
And
And he
people will
really
like
brings out something
criticize.
personal.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what, not to cut you off there, but he does bring, that's kind of what that dude does. He just brings out he brings it out of the people, he's all about like
Mhm.
the vibe. And like I've talked about some of the engineers will be like, oh, that record, the vocal mic clips and this happens and this happens. I'm like, because that's just, those are tools. And this is a human being. Like,
Yeah,
break the gear. You know what? The gear is there to capture the soul. And if the gear can't
yeah,
handle it, like that's like get the performance, and I think that's
yeah.
kind of what that dude has brought out of a lot of people is getting the performance. So that's a good question. I appreciate that. What town is
And there
that?
you go. Yeah, Gavin, what town is that there? He said they just filmed that Bob Dylan
Oh,
movie in my
okay.
town.
Cool.
But
I'd
yeah,
like to work with Steve
the
Raimi. That's who I like. The guy who made Evil Dead. He should make one of my music videos.
oh yeah. Sam Raimi.
Sam
Sam
Raimi,
Raimi.
Sam Raimi.
That would be amazing. He might cost quite a bit because he's got that Marvel money now.
Yeah, yeah. If
But
you're
you could,
listening,
I'm
Sam.
sure, yeah. Sam Raimi and Rick Rubin. It's not like you're asking for the world, Brian. It's really simple. Bob Dylan, Rick Rubin, Sam Raimi.
If George Romero could rise from the dead and make a new zombie movie with me
Yeah.
doing the soundtrack, that'd be
That's
killer.
so that's the next music videos you should do like a zombie. You should do an homage to Dawn of the Dead.
I would that would be awesome. I would totally love to do that. Let's
If
do
you
the
shoot it
Kickstarter
the right
campaign.
way, you don't even need that many people. You can make it look like it's a whole bunch of zombies, right? You just got to shoot it the right way.
Yeah.
Gavin says Cape May, New Jersey is where they shot
Oh,
that.
cool. I was there
And yes,
once.
and in Cape May.
Yeah.
And Antonis, yes, Red Hot Chili Peppers is a band. It is a food too. Easy get, says Tyler about Sam Raimi, Rick Rubin, and Bob Dylan. Yeah, I was listening to your record today to just sort of get in the mood, before the interview here, and this one lyric just sort of like stood out to me. I think in our last interview, I tried to like quote something and completely botched it, so I wrote it down this time. It's on Circle Road. I really love this lyric here. That's I don't belong here. I hold no place in your army of hate. And it's like when I read it, it goes by so quickly, but you've got this really great great way of kind of stretching it out. And to me, it kind of stood out because, it feels like we're sort of, that whole like army of hate thing. It's like everyone's capable, like each group is capable of having this sort of like weird kind of, mentality. And also just like, even there's a breath between like the I don't belong here and I hold no place. So it almost like stands alone and hangs there for a second.
Oh, cool.
Now, what's that?
I said, oh, cool. I never noticed that, but yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, I feel like it's sort of, there's a little bit of suspension there. And it's just one of those lyrics that I adore that song, because it just kind of talks about how, every group has sort of been through this whole victim and, and villain kind of role throughout history. But yeah, it is just something that I wanted to mention here. And again, kind of brings, reminds me a little bit of that whole kind of Romero sort of way of thinking. Now to kind of shift it over from like that whole, Romero kind of mentality as well. Have you recently seen any movies or anything that kind of give you that same sort of feeling? Or is there anything that like, even like a musical artist that like you feel like kind of akin to, or in any sort of way like that?
I'm pretty out of touch as far as like modern music or even films go. I'm not really like a big fan of current Hollywood. I mean, anything recently that I mean, when I think of like modern horror movies, like I think of, oh, what the hell is that movie? Hereditary. That's
Mm,
probably something I'm not talking about like I feel like a bond with or anything. I'm just talking like
mhm,
recent great horror, or like It Follows. I really like that movie.
mhm.
The
That's got that
Ring.
like kind of Carpenter, like that Carpenter score and like the long tracking shots on It
Yeah,
Follows.
I feel like what's that TV show everyone been watching, Stranger Things? I feel like Stranger Things just saw It Follows and they were like, "We're just ripping off this whole vibe and we're gonna make a show
Yeah.
about it." That's what they do out there, And then like, because It Follows came out and it was like timeless, but 80s, but what like synth, but
Yeah.
maybe but it didn't really have, it was like really well crafted, and
Mhm.
I remember seeing it like reading, I'm like, it's probably goofy. Like, the premise of like the STD that is like some spiritual entity that follows people until you give it to the next. I'm like, it seems kind of goofy. But then I saw that movie and I was like, holy shit, this is a good, really well made film. And it really
Mhm.
had me freaked out by the end of it. Like there was some really spooky, creepy things that happened. I really loved that, and I loved like you mentioned, the Carpenter-esque aesthetic with the music and the whole fall, and, yeah,
Yeah.
I thought that was great, and Hereditary just damaged me, like, I don't even recommend that movie. I'm like, "That's the best horror movie I've ever seen that I would just suggest nobody sees because it just crosses a lot of lines," but upon further analysis, like, I've been down the rabbit hole of analyzing that movie, and it's absolutely brilliant, everything that kinda plays in and the layers going on there. This is just
Yeah. Well, and, sometimes like a really good horror movie or something unsettling, it's like you see it once and that's all you need.
yeah.
It's like there's certain movies, like I saw Requiem for a Dream once, like,
Yeah,
it's not horror, but I didn't want to go back to that. Like
basically is, yeah.
it's not pleasant, very
Yeah,
well made, but oh my God, it's like Darren Aronofsky movies. Once is enough.
I
And
love
then
that movie. So good,
have you
yeah.
seen? Did you see The Witch? Have you seen that one?
I have seen The Witch. I wasn't crazy about it. I thought it was I probably need to revisit it again.
You know what
You
I did? The key, I think, for me is when I watch David or Robert Eggers movies, is I put subtitles on. Because like no
Okay.
matter what movie it is of his, like I can't understand anyone. It's like I watched that Lighthouse movie with Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe, and
Yeah,
that
yeah.
is like their accents are friggin' crazy. And I was like,
Yeah.
all right, subtitles, here we go.
Yeah. Subtitles are the way to go. Get you a
But
little
yeah,
more
there
immersed.
exactly. Yeah, and there is that whole sort of like, everyone calls it elevated horror. I don't know. To me, I feel like there have always been horror movies kind of like that, but now it's sort of there's like a movement. It's sort of like, there's a trend of these movies that just kind of operate on a little bit of a different level. Like have you seen Late Night with the Devil? Where
No,
I
but I
got the
heard you
name
guys
for the
talking
show.
about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's one of those. I really enjoyed it, and of course, the overhype can kill anything, but I really loved it. I thought
I'll
it
have to
was a
check it
cool
out.
kind of different sort of movie,
Nice.
kind of puts you there a little bit. They switch back from like 3:4 aspect ratio because it's like you're watching like a 70s talk show. And then when
Yeah.
they go to commercial break, it goes to like a black and white widescreen and you see like all the behind the scenes, like conversations that go on and like the real moments. And then they cut back to like, all right, we're back to the talk show, so
Sounds
it's really
interesting.
kind of it's immersive, and good performances from actors that aren't like massive. So that for me is always like a big thing too, to just like let me sort of, let go and just, invest myself in the film.
Mm,
I recommend that one. I think you just might dig it. It is
yeah.
a bit out there, but in a fun kind of way. Um,
Cool.
so
I'll have to
now
track it
when
down.
you're on the road, are you gonna be like, all right, now that I'm out there, maybe on a day off, I'll go enjoy some AC and watch a movie in the theater? Anything like that? What do you do with your days off on tour?
In the past, on my days off, I mostly rest, because it's like, I do, like, all the driving and, a lot
Hmm.
of driving, and then so you kinda, like, drive all day, you play the gig or whatever, and then you kinda, like, sleep in your car or a motel or something, and, so when you do get a day off, you're kinda like, "Whoa, just maybe I'll go to a movie, kinda go for a
Yeah.
a hike or something, hit a pond." I like to go camping in the summer, like, if I'm
Hmm.
traveling, I have a few days off, I'll kinda go camping somewhere and just, like, chill, so that's kinda I'm kinda, like, looking forward to just kinda, like, decompressing a little bit from the this life that I've been living over the last couple of years here and kind of
Hmm.
getting back to, like, my passions and what I really care about,
Yeah.
as far as my creativity and performing, and, I have, like, some other ideas about some stuff that I'd like to write kinda a little outside of the I mean, my last record was very serious, so I'm kinda going into, like, a non-serious mode, maybe
Nice.
a lighter time, so we'll see what happens out there, in the past, like, I would definitely, like, pop into a movie theater or something, the hell do I do? Honestly, dude, like, my favorite thing to do on, like, a day off is rent, like, a motel in the middle of nowhere and just be like, go experience some, like, little town that I never
Yeah.
heard of, at some
Yeah.
roadside place and just kinda soak it in, um, and just kinda catch the vibes, and, I don't really do a lot of, like, writing traditionally, or I usually do that when I'm after the travels, then songs will
Hmm.
pop up, so I don't really have a lot of expectations, I would say, so we'll kinda see what happens.
Hell yeah. And you're gonna go back to Montana. Do you see yourself in Montana for, the next little bit? Or do you think you're gonna, hop on to a new place and get going, just, experience a whole different kind of atmosphere?
I don't really know, man. Um, I'm kinda, like, doing some soul searching right now and seeing, like, what I wanna do moving forward. I grew up Montana's been good to me. I've had a
Hmm.
good run here, and, um, in, like, my darkest hour, like, this place just, like, opened up to me, and I was able to, like, land on my feet, like,
Hmm.
and get an apartment, and, like, I gotta, and get a car and, like, pay bills and, like, you know yeah,
Yeah.
I was literally like, "I don't know what the hell I'm gonna do." Like, when you throw all your stuff into a Prius and you drive to Montana, you're kinda like you're letting, like, "Okay, universe, what will unfold?" So,
Yeah.
however,
Talk
all
about a
that
leap
being
of faith.
yeah, yeah, yeah. you had to really dive into the faith piece there, and that's why I maintain like a contact with a spiritual practice and a higher power. But I have the itch, like to explore, and winter is long here. It is a long,
Yeah.
long winter. Like it's gonna snow tonight up in the mountains here, so which is I'm already in the mountains, so
Wow.
yeah, yeah.
Whoa.
It's like
It's like 100 degrees here in Phoenix.
yeah, it snowed a couple weeks ago, and I was just like, "Oh, like, I can't."
Wow. Yeah, that's hardcore.
I heard you guys talking about the weather in Vegas and Phoenix, and I'm just like, "Oh, yeah, 96, that's what I'm talking about."
Yeah.
Like,
Or
sign
hey,
me
you
up.
brought it up earlier. Maybe Tucson's a good spot for you because they're usually a bit colder, even in like the hottest part of the year. They're usually
Yeah,
about 10 degrees cooler. And they do have a really nice, there's Mount Lemon up there, which Kate and I went up for a couple of friends of ours got married, and we drove up there, and it was like by the time you get to the spot where they had their wedding, it's like there's all sorts of like aspen trees, and it's like you could be anywhere. It doesn't even feel like you're
yeah,
in the desert. As you go up the mountain, you see all these different ecosystems, and it's just kind of blew my mind of like, wow, this is in the middle of the desert, like
that's
this
pretty
mountain
cool.
oasis, you know?
I didn't even know about that mountain. I need to check that out. That sounds cool.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. It's a heck of a drive. It wasn't a scary drive, but it was like, wow, this is like never ending going up here. Pretty incredible. And man, Tucson's got killer record stores. They do have a fun little music scene out there. And yeah, maybe think about it.
Yeah, the first
Or when you could,
time go ahead.
oh, I was gonna say when you come back around on tour, maybe you swing through there, although it's gonna be like extra brutally hot in Arizona when you
Yeah,
come back.
I've been there in the summer, and it's pretty, gnarly. I
Yeah.
actually the first time I toured through Phoenix, like 10 years ago or something like that, it was like 115 or something at night or something absurd, and I was like sleeping in my van, so I'm like, "I
Ugh.
can't do
Yeah.
this." And I looked at the
No.
weather in Tucson, and it was like 95, and I'm like, "Going to Tucson." So I packed it up and
Yeah.
drove to Tucson and slept, went down to like 90 or something, and I was like, "Oh, I can actually sleep in this," but yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't let up here once it gets going.
I love, like, when it's
Unfortunately.
there's nothing more beautiful than the end of a crazy hot day like that in the Southwest and then at, like, dusk when it starts to cool down and, like, there's this whole vibe and the colors and everything. I really love that time of day
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, it is. It's beautiful in a totally different way than like what I was used to growing up. And it definitely, made me realize like, every place has its own kind of beauty, and
yeah.
like the good things about it and bad things, good times a year, bad times a year. Like I miss the rain sometimes, we don't
I
get
bet.
that much of it here. And
Yeah,
sometimes I like a gloomy day. I don't know what it is, but
yeah.
then there are other people. The reason why they come here is because they never want to see a gloomy day ever. And I'm like, don't you just want to put on a movie and snuggle in a blanket and just have, an excuse to be that way?
Yeah,
But
that's what
maybe
happened
that's
when I
just
lived
me.
in LA. I was like, "God, it's just too damn nice out all the time. I need some rainy day." It's like 10 months of summer. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm just, like, never happy. It's always something.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for spending some time here with us, Brian. I think we've been chatting for a little bit, and oh
Cool.
my gosh, yeah, we are at 2 hours on the show. That is like right around the time we usually wrap things up. So, really pumped we were able to show off your brand new music video. Guys, please check out Brian's website in the link in the description below. You can find tour dates, merch, all that kind of great stuff. And of course, check out those tour dates and see if he's coming somewhere near you because you're kind of going all the way across the country there in the northern part and then back. So we'll see what that trail is like leading you back to Montana. But yeah, what we should do is next time you've got something new to show off, we'll have you
Mm,
back on the show and
awesome.
share that with everyone once again. And yeah, man, really appreciate you jumping on and
Likewise.
sharing some of your thoughts. And yeah, guys, go get a copy on vinyl. If you don't listen to vinyl, what the heck are you doing? And if you don't listen to Bryan McPherson, extra, what the heck are you doing? Got a whole bunch of great stuff out there. And we're going to put in a good word for you, Bryan, to Rick Rubin, Sam Raimi, and Bob Dylan. We'll get you at least 2 of the 3. Like Meatloaf said, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. So we'll get that going for you, man.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Thanks everyone who stuck around and listened. And thanks for the questions to everybody. Thanks, Davey. Appreciate you, man. All right.
Absolutely, Bryan. Take care, man. Have a great rest of your night.